I got an email a few days ago from a potential client wanting me to look at the system that an integrator had spec'd for their church. And they also asked me what would I come up with. So I went through step by step and played with speaker designs and placement, and I thought it'd be really cool to show you step by step how I got there. More of like a stream of consciousness of what am I thinking through, what underlying and fundamental principles are at play when I'm thinking about a design. So right here in front of us, I got the layout picture that the church sent me. And of course, I'm going to be looking at further pictures of the space, asking them more about their preferences, any specific brands that they like, what they want to go for. But knowing this set of data right in front of me, their current system, their seating area, the trim height limitations, and the style of music they're going for, what would I come up with for a middle tier, honestly mid to upper tier system? I can always scale back what I'm designing for them because speaker coverage angles are speaker coverage angles. SPL is SPL. So that's going to govern a lot of things, but we're going to see how I came up with a fulcrum acoustic rig that I think is going to sound great for them if they choose to go through with it. But excited to share with you from complete scratch in Ease Focus 3 how I make a system get within plus or minus 3 dB throughout every audience chair that's in the blue seating area. Let's jump right in. So I'm running Ease Focus 3 in parallels. I've upgraded to Sonoma recently, so some of the rendering's a little bit funky, but we'll be able to work through it. I've got a PNG here of the church layout, and that's the first thing we're going to do after opening up Ease Focus 3 is import this in here to have as a reference and guide. One thing to note real quick is if I go to File and Options, I go down here to Environment, I am in extended mode. That gives us a few more functionality, a few more functions within the software to play with. So if you're following along here in your own copy of Ease Focus 3, that's what's going on. And you're also going to have access to this Ease Focus 3 file at the link below if you want to snag it and look at the design and see what I did. Okay, we're going to click OK. And we want to import that layout picture. So I'm going to click right here on layout picture. It's going to prompt us to look for the file. I have it favorited up here. Going to go to assets, click on church layout. You can also do a JPEG. So I think PNG, JPEG, and a couple other formats. It's going to have this little line here at the bottom, and that's going to help us scale things. Basically, we drag it points A and B to two different points on our layout picture and tell it how long it is. So right down here at the bottom, it says 28 feet 6 inches, and I feel like that's good to latch onto. So I'm going to grab it here. In the upper right, I have a little tool that helps me aim it right here, and then B right there. I go down here to line length. I'm going to do 28.6. Sounds good to me. And now it's scaled. So it says 10 feet right here is that long. And then now that's true and scaled to my drawing. I'm also going to make this audience size a lot smaller, and it gives us one audience zone when we boot up. Going to click here and scale to fit. It's going to click on it, zoom out just a little bit here. And now I want to make my audience zones. Later, we'll add in some speakers. I want to basically match up these to my blue seating areas that's already defined for me. If it wasn't defined, I would probably just make a rectangle that's big enough to cover this whole floor, but it's nice that I already know where chairs are at. And that's usually the first thing I ask is like, hey, where are the people at? Because that's what we want to do with our system design is make sure it sounds amazing in every single seat within a certain set of parameters, and that is level variance and tonal or spectral variance. So I want to minimize that as much as possible. So that's the two things at the front of my mind the entire time that I am designing. But first, we got to set up our session. So the normal orientation Ease wants to work at is things moving from right to left. So it'd be the stage here, then audience over here. I chose to keep the orientation of the picture the same. So we have to move everything off a little bit. So I'm going to rotate this here on the right hand side and have it match the angle, and it's pretty close to 61 degrees. I can move the edge right here and get it really lined up. And yeah, so 61.55 degrees is the angle we have, and now I'm going to drag it and match here. And now I've got the rectangle that's fitted to this area. And now I'm just going to simply do the same thing for the other audience areas. So copy, paste, Command C, Command V, go right here, drag it for this next biggest one. And same thing again for this one on the other side. It looks like this room is close to symmetrical as far as the audience sizes, but we can see here this center seating area is not centered up on the stage. So that's something I'm taking note of. Now I'm going to move this guy be here, and it's a little bit wider than the other side. Something to note. Again, there might just be tolerances in the drawing, but I'm just going to take these as accurate as I can. Now I'm going to resize this and move it here to be this rectangle. Same thing here. Make one on the other side about the same size. Now let's make another small one for the very front row of chairs. Boom, we're close right there. And I can have these overlap if I want, so not a big deal if they do just a hair. Zoom in here. And it looks like it's not wanting me to get any smaller than that. Oh yeah, I think the smallest dimension you can do on the width is 6 feet or something like that. So here we are. So that's where we're at. Close enough. We'll move it here. Actually change the orientation to be long ways and have it overlap with that one. Here we are. Let's zoom to fit. And now I have my audience areas laid out. I'm going to save now. And now I can start thinking about this from a system design perspective of like, okay, how am I going to go about covering this? Just what they already have noted here are some Yorkvilles that are hung right here, and they have a subwoofer on the stage. So they're used to a left-right main with some overlap. So if they want that, let's see if we can go with a similar design, but I'm going to alter the placement some. It looks like they've got them centered up on where the stage is, kind of. I don't know if there's some rigging concerns where they had to move it. There's an AC duct, but I'm going to go with best case scenario on this first design. And once I get more information about pictures and placement where they want to go, then we will adjust. So something that you've probably heard me say before is you want to aim through the middle of our audience zones. But where are they? Well, if I have 2 speakers, I'm going to divide it into 2 zones and then see if we need to put in another speaker to fill in any gaps. So we'll figure that out. And maybe we can get a flown subwoofer in there. We'll see what happens. So let's create some crosshairs, if you will, for aiming. And how we're going to do that is go up here to the section plane tool, and it basically just gives us some lines that we can use as guides. So if I click here, I'm going to draw a rectangle around this entire area. So I'm going to do right here at the edge and draw it from end to end at our same angle. Need to drag this guy up a little bit, put it at the back. And another one here from this side down on to the very front row. I'll adjust these a little bit here. And then here to the end, then here to the end. Okay, so let's do some fine tuning right here. So it just makes a square right around where things are. Fantastic. Now we have a square. It really is almost a square. This is, let's see, line length is 40 feet on this guy. And line length on this guy is 41. So it's just a little bit deeper than it is. And now we're going to divide it in half. So now I'm going to go to the middle of our center guy and create another one right here. So now we want to aim through the middle of these zones. And how can we quickly find that? We're going to go here and make an X from corner to corner. So right here, start from the bottom left here and drag up. Where those intersect right here is now where we need to aim our speakers through to be able to shoot through the center. And granted, we're going to probably be going along somewhere on this line and maybe need to move them left or right depending on sight lines and maybe some rigging spots where we can put stuff. But again, we're starting with first best case scenario, and that's where I want to go, is have a speaker aiming through here and what will be the center of this zone. So let me add these other lines. Right here, here to that corner, and then here to this corner, down right here. There we go. So now I've got our aiming zones, and I'm going to do one more pair of lines. And this is going from the center of the back. I'm going to drag it all the way here. So now if I need to scoot a speaker upstage or downstage, I now can have a guide for what needs to stay there. This is easier when the design is running straight north and south, but I kept or east and west. But I kept the same orientation here this time. Now I'm going to go here to the center of that, drag, and now I've got a guiding line to move things upstage and downstage. So because we are going to adjust our speaker placement in 3 dimensions. Again, we have a 15.5 foot trim height, so that's our height axis, and then we have left to right on the audience, and then we also have our tilt. and then also our depth of the speaker. So not only orientation, but the Z, X, and Y axes. So I'm going to go and let's pick something out here. Even though these audience zones aren't super wide, we need to get wide in a hurry to be able to cover these side areas right here. So let's start with a 90-degree wide box. So I think we're going to also start with a 15-inch woofer, a single 15 from Focal Acoustics, and that is their CX1595. And looks like we have 90-degree wide, we have 45-degree vertical. That might be a little tight, but we can measure that and see what's going on. We can play with trim height, all that. So I'm going to hit OK. I'm going to click and put it along this line a little bit on stage. And I've got my mapping turned on here. And now it's pointed right here down this center lane. If I click on it now and go to side view, I can now see its response. And right now we're looking at broadband A weighted. So that means across the A weighted spectrum, just like SPL A weighted, that entire frequency spectrum, what is the current coverage and levels here? So right now, again, the rendering's a little bit weird. It is showing us that we're good. The entire area is green. So what I have checked here is the relative checkbox. And this shows us the SPL within a relative span. So plus or minus 6 dB. That's obviously too large. I want to be within a plus or minus 3 dB span. So this shows me basically a total right here of a 6 dB range. And that's my design goal, as I want as many or as low a frequency as we can within that. Since I'm working with the point source and we don't have a lot of control over how the low frequencies move out in an orb, I'm really prioritizing about 500 hertz and up. And if we can get lower and lower to be uniform, we can. So we're within a plus or minus 3 dB span, and we're looking at broadband. The other one I'm going to look at is 3 octaves at 4K, so specifically the top end. So we can see that within its own little zone right here, it's actually doing okay. I've not aimed the speaker down, but if I'm just looking at it from a pure horizontal coverage perspective, we're already in good shape. Again, this is a 90 by 45. If I click show mapping off, ease will actually give us a little preview of what the 90-degree horizontal is going to look like with this shaded little blue area. For aiming purposes, I'm going to take this guy and I'm going to aim him at the back row. And you might think, okay, Michael, you're wasting all this top area. How come we're doing it? The reason why is that there's something called the minimum variance line on the speaker. This is a K8 and it's 105 degrees. So I taped on the ground here a 105-degree triangle. If I measured out about 6 feet, that's on X near. If I go double that, that's on axis far, and that's on axis or directly in line with the speaker's throw. So with this line, off axis is the same 12-foot span, but I just dragged it off. So this yellow line right here is called the minimum variance line. That's where actually the frequency response of the speaker changes the least rapidly up until we get to our off axis, which is the minus 6 dB point in our high frequencies. So we basically want to match this minimum variance line if we pick the speaker up and had its vertical coverage be along our audience to match right here. So if we have a line this far, and if we click and make one the same length and drag it down, we see that we already are asking the speaker to do something it's not supposed to. That's because point sources are only supposed to have like a 2-to-1 range ratio. Basically, we would only want it to throw twice as far as from the nearest to the nearest to farthest seat, but we can get away with going a little bit more, and we'll look at that tolerance in a little bit. So I'm not saying you need to throw a line array in every room, but ideally we would be under a 2-to-1 range ratio. We're a little bit farther here, but what I do want to point out is I basically want to shape where the speaker's coverage is to be right here. And if we want to get to the front row right here, I want to get my minimum variance line to see if I can land right here on the audience and have the least amount of change as possible. So that's why I want to orient my speaker at the back row. So if I turn on my mapping now, we'll see at 4K that this red area is the main coverage we see here. And for the most part, it's landing on here. Then we get some drop off here in the back. So this mapping tool does not show us the full picture. It's only showing us at 4K with the 3-octave weighting, or within the broadband at A weighted. And so we can see, obviously, it's hot here in the front and less here in the back. So let's zoom in a little bit and actually add some little receivers and look at the frequency response. So this is the first thing I do after getting a general picture of what I'll put in there, is add these. So I can click, and they're like little mini microphones. So I'm going to go to the very front row and add frequency probe. They're called probes in JBL world, but they're receivers here in East Focus 3. I'm going to add them on axis and equally space 4 of them front to back in the audience. And this would also correspond with where I'd place my measurement microphones when I'm actually tuning the system, so I can get a preview of what's going on. So number 1 in the very front, number 4 in the back, and then evenly space 2 and 3. So I got 4 data points I can look at right here. And we'll add some others on the other side in a little bit. So if I go to this frequency response tab, I can now look with that single speaker at its current placement what is happening. So 1, 2, 3, 4 is right here front to back. I can actually click on it and it'll relativize all the other ones to it and show me if number 1 was flat, where's everything else. I can see here that number 1, it being close to the speaker, again, point source behavior, low frequencies, it's obviously going to have more low end. So I really want to look at, again, here from 500 hertz on up. And here's one thing I don't like seeing. This front row, you see how the frequency response above 2K dives down below the others? I want the same shape across all frequencies, the same tonal response. And so I don't like this. We are in the front row getting a lot of low end and not enough top end. So let's look at our side view right here. So it looks like right here, we're actually getting enough top end coverage for right here and right here, right here. And it's too steep of an angle, it looks like, at this trim height. And I have the speaker right now at about 13 feet, and I could even go a little bit higher if I wanted to, because I can go up to 12.5. So if I put it at 14.5, 15.5 is right up here, though it's still clear, but it actually makes the problem worse if I go higher. If you see some of my other videos, I usually say, hey, usually go with the highest trim height as you can, and I can angle this down more, but let's see if that helps it. So by going higher, I could actually make the range ratio less, which is helpful. But can it get enough high frequency content down here to this number 1? Again, this is a 90 by 45 degree speaker. This is a fairly narrow vertical coverage angle. So let's see if it gets any better. And it doesn't. I see here in the front row that from here on down, it dips below and I don't like it. Okay, so we know 45 degrees, at least at that trim height, is not going to work. But let's see if we can test out our horizontal coverage and see if 90 degrees works. So I'm going to add 2 more probes here at mid depth in the room, number 5, and then I'm going to go to this zone, and here's number 6. Basically looking at right here where these 2 X's cross, so I'll fine-tune my placement a little bit here. Left and right, are we able to get there? And if I move another probe down here, kind of towards the bottom of this, is it getting wide enough in a hurry? So if I go back to frequency response, look at 5, 6, and 7. So I'm going to right click on this guy and have him disappear. 5 and 6, those left and right, it looks like I need to change a little bit of the orientation of these because these are now a little bit different. Ideally, I would want them equal at mid depth. Looks like because I don't have enough of a vertical coverage angle here in the center, things aren't happening either. So this is telling me that I need a box with more vertical coverage. I need to alter this angle a little bit. So let's first solve the horizontal coverage problem. So 5 and 6, I want them equal. So it looks like 5 is a little bit under. So I'm going to angle it towards 5 a little bit more. So now I can grab him. So again, the middle is a good rule of thumb, but it's not the end all be all. So I'm going to angle it a little bit more. I'm just watching these traces and trying to get them to line up. So I'm going to grab this guy, move him, and it looks like it's not moving equally at all frequencies. I know we are off axis a little bit. This guy might be a little bit closer, but in general, now they are more in line. I'm getting them basically cross here at 4K. We get a little bit of a bump here at 2K and a little bit of a dip. I also have to think about something else with number 6. It's also going to get the most amount of equal overlap from the speaker over here, so it might get some help. So this is not the end all be all at the moment, but let's see if I can maybe tow him back in just a hair, and we'll see what's going on. So what I do know now is that 90 degrees is indeed enough horizontally to cover what I need. I actually maybe have a little bit too much, but I am concerned about here in the very front. So this center section that's going on really close to the stage. So I might need like a center downfill or something. But all that to say, I don't want to put a downfill under the main right here for the very front. So let's grab a speaker with more vertical coverage. So if I reach back in my toolbox or speaker barn, if you will, Fulcrum Acoustic also has a 75 by 75, which is this is the same coverage angle as a K12. So now I'm going to put it here and get rid of this guy. So we can upstage just a little bit. I'm going to angle him out, get back to a really similar coverage angle that we were. I'm at 14.5 foot trim. Again, this is under our 15.5. I've pointed him at the back row. Let's look at things horizontally. And they are really close match, which is good. So I'm happy with this now. So we got a horizontal placement down. So now let's hide these guys and look at our vertical coverage. Now, is this even front to back? Are they crossing at all? And let's see what the jury says. Okay. So number 1 is our front row. It kind of meets the low in here. And number 2, it does a much better job of keeping the same shape, but actually the later rows end up louder here at 1K and above. So let's look at that from the top view. And that's showing me right here that the high frequencies are louder. And then basically the third row, the number 3 and number 1 are the same level in the high frequencies. I want it from front to back, a gradual and equal change tonality wise, so we still don't have the right fit. So what can I do to maybe solve this? So I can actually take this guy, look at side view, and my problem is I need more high frequencies in this front row. But so what if I got that speaker closer to the front row, actually decrease or increasing the range ratio in some ways, but I need to get it within a certain tolerance of plus or minus 3 dB. So let's play with that. I'm going to move it down. Let's try back down to our 13-foot trim, reorient him to be just towards the back, and again, look at our frequency response. Much closer here. So this is here, almost here at the top at number 2, and I'm seeing very similar shapes front to back. If I normalize it, let's look at our tolerance here. In this, from here, the very top, and making a little window around it, this would be a plus or minus 6 dB window at this key frequency range. Again, knowing we have a point source, we can't do a whole lot about this that's going on down here, but we're in pretty good shape with that. Let's see if we could fine tune it any further. Got to go to the side view. What if I just cheated a little and didn't go quite all the way towards the back row? Again, yeah, really close. I'm happy with that. Let's look at what looks like Z-weighted, so with low frequencies. Looks pretty normal here. Okay. What if I did just a hair higher? Look at that. Not quite as good. Yeah, I think that lower trim height, getting it closer, help you see that bump up right here. What about even lower, just for funsies? Yeah, get it even closer in the very top, but still need some 2K. Let's angle it up. So again, we're just playing with these different variables of trim height, aiming the speaker within the coverages we know that are going to work. This one so far looks to be almost the closest. Yeah, something in there. It would be about 12.5 or 13 feet of trim at that angle at the back row, and we're going to be in good shape. Now, the next thing I do once I land in a reasonable spot with these speakers is I'm going to duplicate this speaker to the other side, and I will look at what's coverage like elsewhere, because we have this middle area as well as a little bit different shape on the other side. And now I'm going to get rid of this receiver, and this receiver and put them in another few key positions. I'm going to keep these 4 that are here front to back, 1, 2, 3, 4, and place 4 more receivers in more of outlier areas. So I'm going to go to the very front row center, which I'm thinking we're going to need something there. I'm going to go very center in the back. And I'm going to go on the sides, front and rear, and see where it's not ideal if we're able to get the same coverage. So let's take a look. And the biggest deviance I see here is number 5, which is in the front row in the center. So this is telling me that we're going to need another speaker to help cover right here, thus needing that center fill. The next one that's deviating the most is number 7, and that is on the sides right here. Or actually, yeah, on the side in the very rear. So it is both off axis from the speaker and far away, so not a surprise there. And we're seeing that number 8 in the back is getting top end from both speakers, so we are okay. Let me eliminate this outlier here, number 5, and just see if the rest is in good shape. We can see here all the speakers, or all the positions, everything is making a similar shape, which is good to me. I don't see much crossing with what's going on. Let me normalize to number 2. This is what I usually end up doing and seeing where the deviances are. So I can see my bottom zone right here, about 1K and above. If I go 6 dB below, everything is falling pretty close within that. It's number 7, which dips below it the most. So our hottest seat in the room in the top end is number 2. So this is just beyond where I might feel really comfortable about putting a system here. I think if they rolled with this, it would work and they'd be happy. But they just have to know that these seats right here towards the back corners have a little bit of top end and total SPL versus the front. So I'm not saying they absolutely need delays or a different system type, but that's where I might just really double check things after commissioning and make sure intelligibility is good. So if we bring back number 5, we can see by far that's the one that needs the most help, and that's that front and center. So let's see how we can solve that. Let's go back to our Fulcrum catalog here. So the CX8, there's a 8-inch speaker. That's the 90 by 60. I'm going to put it right here in the center. Get closer here, and I will angle it out. Angle it towards the center. And I'm going to aim him to really just worry about this front section. I'm going to scoot him upstage just a little bit. Yeah. There we go. I really just care about him getting this first section. And let's look at our frequency response now. Here at number 5. Yeah, so number 5 is in good shape now, and that's with that current level of that speaker here. So it's right in the middle of that pack. We would fine tune the aiming and levels in the field, but I know that's how we could solve that, is by adding that center fill. Lastly, we need to think about a subwoofer. There are currently not GLL files for all of Fulcrum subwoofers. There's just one, the CS21. But I can throw that in here, and I would roll with a center flown sub behind that center fill. Probably their dual 18 enclosure, and be hung right here. So if I get rid of all the other ones, go back to Z-weighted broadband, that's the sub energy. It's all going to radiate from one point. It's going to be hottest in the front. I don't want to go with left-right, because I would get some power alleys and valleys. I'm already going to have a speaker there in the center, so I can hang something behind it. I can get fancy and do like an inline cardioid or something, but if I had just to keep budget reasonable, keep complexity reasonable, this is what I would do. So hiding this guy now, let's bring back these 3 speakers, go back to A-weighted broadband. We could see from the plus minus 3 dB, we are in good shape here. We're seeing some of these little hot spots just from the speakers interacting with each other, some of the comb filtering just from them being separate. But otherwise, though, we are in good shape, and my frequency response Everything's within a plus or minus 3 dB span from 1K on up. I wish we could get that down to 500 as well, but that's just where we're at on this design. So now I would go to File, Create Report, leave all that checked. And let's go back here and make that to just call it System Report. Hit Enter and I export it. I can now look some more data. And now we have all the speakers and the coverage areas that I've made. And I can see here 85% of the audience on an A-weighted spectrum is within plus or minus 2.2 dB, which I think is pretty good in my book. This also gives us any of the filtering settings and the exact placements of the speakers, which is cool. So this is what I would hand to an integrator. I would probably go back and reset the origin of the file to have the 0 point to be right here. But they can also have the Ease Focus 3 file and look and see what they need and get that. Again, this is just a V1 to get the conversation going. Some of the rigging and placement might have to change. Maybe they really want the sound of a dual 12s instead of a 15. Maybe they really want a bunch of subs, so let's add another dual 18 cabinet. But this, just wanted to show you what I'm thinking through and what are my design goals, what's a go, no-go on a design, what can I play with to change coverages and SPL, and how am I manipulating Ease Focus 3 to give me those different types of data. So you can get access to this design file at the link below in my audio toolkit. It gets you the system report as well as this Ease Focus 3 file. It'll ask you to import the Fulcrum Acoustic GLL files. When you open the file, just hit OK and I'll bring them in there and you'll be off to the races. My name is Michael Curtis. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate your time. Hopefully this was helpful to get you kind of understanding what's like to be in my brain while I'm thinking about a design. I would love to hear from you. Let me know in the comments below. I'll catch you next time.